Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at what is, honestly, one of the most audacious political experiments in modern human history, the birth of the Indian Republic. Just imagine trying to build a massive democracy completely from scratch, against odds that most people thought were pretty much impossible. January 26, 1950, New Delhi. The morning was bitterly cold. The sky was the stark gray, but man, the atmosphere out there was absolutely electric. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered in the cold to witness something genuinely unprecedented, the creation of a sovereign democratic republic. At the very heart of this huge transition stood a single monumental document, the Constitution of India. We're talking 395 articles here, drafted in both English and Hindi. And it wasn't just some dry legal framework, right? It was a sweeping, highly detailed mandate for an entirely new civilization. And it had to be massive, because the job it had to do was almost unimaginable. This single document aimed to bind together a staggering 350 million people. We're talking about taking a heavily fractured population and stepping into a new era where, basically overnight, they were declared equal citizens of one single state. But, the celebration of this incredible moment was deeply overshadowed by a horrific reality. Just 3 years prior to this, the country had been violently torn apart by partition. Over 1 million people had died. Families were permanently separated, refugees were literally still pouring across the borders, and those physical and emotional wounds, they were still bleeding. The new republic was incredibly, profoundly fragile. The solemn reality on day one really boils down to this. A nation fractured by partition, divided by caste, fragmented by language, splintered by region and religion. Just let that sink in for a second. It's a sobering reminder of the deep uncertainty hanging over the nation as it took its very first democratic breath. Part 1. The immediate challenges, holding the center together. So right off the bat, Dr. Rajendra Prasad takes the oath as India's first president. And crucially, he takes it as an elected citizen, not a king. But surrounding this fragile new democratic core were hundreds of semi-independent princely states, and honestly, they were in total chaos. Would they join India, Pakistan, try to stay independent? Enter India's Home Minister Sardar Patel, famously known as the Iron Man of India. He knew a fragmented nation simply couldn't survive. Through intense, brilliant political negotiation, rather than outright warfare, Patel managed to persuade the vast majority of these states to accede to India, miraculously securing the physical boundaries of this new democracy.
But physical boundaries were really only the beginning. It begged a pretty dramatic question. Would linguistic divisions tear the country apart? I mean, think about it. Can people speaking completely different languages with entirely different histories actually exist in one unified nation?
Because India didn't just have 2 or 3 languages. It had 22 major languages and hundreds of minor ones. So when the Constitution made the deeply controversial choice to designate Hindi as the sole official language of the Union, that single decision instantly sparked an existential crisis. Down in the southern states like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Andhra Pradesh, people spoke languages completely unrelated to Hindi. They had these deep, very real fears that Hindi imposition would just erase their distinct cultures and histories. And almost immediately in 1950, explosive protests erupted. Young men were literally burning Hindi textbooks in the streets, demanding that English be kept as a link language just to preserve their regional identities. And this brilliantly illustrates the kind of tightrope they were walking. To manage the crisis, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru recognized the massive danger here and backed a really pragmatic compromise. The government adopted a 3-language formula, requiring students to learn Hindi, English as an associate language, and a regional language. It was a delicate but absolutely necessary balancing act to save the Union. Part 2. Caste and communal violence, the social crucible. Now, what's really interesting about the slide is the stark paradox at play here. Under constitutional law, untouchability was completely abolished, gone, with seats and jobs reserved for oppressed castes. So on paper, the caste system was dead. But the harsh social reality out there was very different. Out in the villages, Dalits were still denied access to temples. Atrocities continued. The law mandated equality, sure, but it couldn't just instantly dismantle centuries of deeply rooted, violent social practice. And communal tensions remained incredibly volatile, too. Let's walk through this timeline quickly. The Constitution comes into effect on January 26, 1950. But just 4 days later, on January 30th, the nation observed the agonizing anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi's assassination by a Hindu extremist. That trauma still loomed so heavily over everything, as mere months later, those violent language protests erupted in the South. Violence, not just reason, was fiercely vying for India's fate.
Part 3. Nehru's Vision, the Tool of Social Revolution.
You see, Nehru was navigating massive contradictions. India's actual reality was deeply religious, profoundly unequal, and steeped in caste tradition. Nehru's ambition for it, however, was a modern, secular state, strict equality, and the abolition of caste by decree. To him, the Constitution wasn't just a legal text, it was a dynamic tool of social revolution. He literally meant to use it to force society to evolve.
Part 4. The Democratic Gamble, Survival Against the Odds.
A peaceful transfer of power held. That simple sentence carries profound weight. When the clock struck midnight on January 26, 1950, India didn't collapse into chaos. There was no military coup. The army remained loyal, the police obeyed the new constitution, and the transition held incredibly firm. We really have to put this in global context. At this time, democracies across the post-colonial world were completely failing. Military dictators were seizing power, neighboring nations were fragmenting right and left, yet India, facing staggering poverty and widespread illiteracy, chose the audacious path of a massive democracy anyway. They were attempting something on a scale that had literally never been tried before.
So the crucial point is captured right here. As Dr. Ambedkar profoundly summarized, political equality existed amid profound social and economic inequality. They basically gave every adult the right to vote in a society where almost nothing else was equal. It was a massive leap of faith in democratic participation.
Which leaves us with a pretty provocative question. Can a fractured, deeply unequal nation truly be transformed by the power of a single democratic document? The events of January 26, 1950 set that very test in motion. It's an ongoing experiment in resilience that continues to define the world's largest democracy today, showing us exactly why these early, fragile moments of nation building still matter to all of us now. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it sparked your curiosity to explore even more about this incredible history.